Please welcome to the stage moderator Rick Champagne.
Please, you're here. Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. We have an exciting panel lineup for you. We're going to be talking on the subject of sovereign AI for public service media, which actually has impact across all of media companies. And you may have heard some of the things that NVIDIA has been working on, specifically with global governments. And so that's where the project began. And then we'll get into how this has evolved with the EBU as well, and how Dell and Quest have joined us. And so, but we'll start first with introductions, and we'll start with Vanessa, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Hi, Vanessa Fiola, EVP at Quest. I head AI.
Hans Hoffmann, Deputy Director, Technology Innovation at the EBU in Geneva.
Hey, Greg Schiff from Dell. I am the technical lead for all things media and entertainment at Dell Technologies.
Great. And so let's just kick off lightly here. So obviously AI has been having a global impact. Companies all over the world are adopting AI to help them with everything from increasing production and also doing things that they could never do before, which is quite amazing. Maybe we'll talk about agents at some point here. But also AI is now an imperative in terms of the things that are possible, particularly in public service media. So when we started with Sovereign AI for governments, this was really all about maintaining culture and language and also social concepts. But maybe we'll kick off with Hans. Why is this really important for public service media, and why is it urgent now?
Well, I think you cannot and you don't want to escape the opportunities what AI is going to deliver, in particular for public service media organizations. And there are a couple of keywords which I would like to share here with you in terms of what defines the sovereignty aspects of it. And in particular, public service media organizations want to stay and have to stay in control of the editorial situation. They have to stay in control of the trust of content, what they deliver to their audiences, independent of whatever the end user device is. Most of the time these days, it's of course the mobile phone and the social media, but also the normal outlets what they have. And it is a very critical situation because editorial staff is going to use the technologies which are provided. Now, we need to make sure as the organizations around it, that it is done in a responsible way. We want to enable everybody who is in an editorial team to use technology, but in a responsible way. And we will talk later about the ingredients, about what does it mean to have sovereign AI, what does it mean in order not to have a biased outcome. And all these topics are super important, but I think what we need to take away, and just for those who don't know, EBU is the largest association of public service media organizations, 113 members worldwide, with associate members in the US, in Canada, in Asia, etc. and so forth. So the feedback what we get is exactly what I've said. We want to use the technology, we want to use AI, we want to use sovereign AI, and this is where actually we are all jointly working on to realize it.
That's right. And so, Vanessa, maybe you can talk a little bit about sovereign AI from the Quest perspective, because you were, in parallel, you were also working towards sovereign AI for your customers. Maybe you can talk a little bit about that.
That's right. And I think that what you're talking about, you know, the name sovereign, it's really about ensuring trust from the very, very beginning. And the way that we think about implementing AI is always very adoption focused. And what that means is that from the very beginning of where you establish which use cases to go after, you have this lens of, okay, well, what can I get adoption with? And then once you've identified the right use case, then you start to build that story, making sure your governance is in place, making sure you're building an evaluation framework that supports that responsible use and is really intentional about what you're gathering from a corpus perspective. And then obviously from a stack perspective, we always think about, okay, what models are, can we really trust from that we know are not leveraging data or visual or images from rights that they don't have, as an example. And then, of course, in order to really engender that trust, it is, returning outputs that are very source-driven, right? So citing the sources in that. So it starts at the very beginning, and then all the way through training, it really underscores that message.
Yeah, and so you mentioned, building some of those pilots as well, and developing the use cases. Obviously, it all starts with a strategy. Everyone needs a strategy around AI at this point, particularly in the world of agents. It's increasingly important to have a corporate strategy or a company-wide strategy. But also getting from pilot to production. Greg, maybe we can start with you on this one. What are some of the things that are blocking, and how are we helping people get into production with AI?
Yeah, so from a Dell perspective on this, we see a lot of this where it starts in the pilot, and this is where we kind of enable that fundamental layer, right? Where we might start out with a pilot on a workstation that has some, hefty GPU in it, and this makes a ton of sense when you have a developer that's using that system day in and day out. And from a sovereignty perspective, I think of that as ownership, right? So you're owning the model, or you're owning the hardware that model runs on, and you really have control over where the data lives and where it's going and where it's not going. And so we look to enable that from the pilot stage, and then right-sizing that and understanding how big those models are, and really, working with our clients to do the math, the hard math. It's not that hard. For how many parameters of the model does that fit in the GPU memory, and how do all those things work? And then it goes to production, where you might want to then look at that infrastructure as a data center kind of situation, where you have lots of users that are connecting, and we need to time split those GPUs and make most effective use of this from a cost and an ownership perspective, and that's kind of where we were looking to enable people.
Right. And Hans, you work with so many different companies as part of the EBU, obviously. Tell us about some of the challenges that you've come across in moving from pilot to production.
So I think the first challenge is the pilot itself. Mm-hmm. And the pilot in the days of AI, agentic AI, sovereign AI, this is what we always want to achieve.
Yes.
Is, of course, you need partnerships. Public service media organizations normally don't have huge development capacity. They have some very intelligent ones, and some of our members even have R&D centers, such as BBC, RAI, NHK, and so forth. But nevertheless, you need partners. So you partner up, and then you come up with a good idea for a use case. We are building a use case at the moment together. And you try to define some characteristics, technical characteristics on the use case, of course, but then you also say, hey, we want to have a sovereign use case. We want to own the data. We want to understand the models which are used. We want to understand the outcome. And normally things are successful. And then coming to your question, what then? You have so many proof of concept, you have so many experiments, and now a successful proof of concept need to be transferred into operations.
Yes.
So that editorial, creative staff can use it on a daily basis. And this is often when we are faced with bigger problems than the use case itself, because it needs to be integrated into existing workflows most of the time. So how do you integrate into existing workflows when you have your workflow? And that is the challenge what we normally see. But these are barriers which we can overcome. One of the first barriers is, I think, good education, because we deal with new technologies. Many of the EBU members, or we have academies as well, where we do joint training programs, also with you guys, which is good. And then the system integrators need to come up to speed, which you do. And others. So in a way, there are barriers which you can overcome, but it takes time. Unfortunately, it always takes time until we come into operations.
Yeah, please.
Mind if I add on to that is one of the things that we think about in terms of getting from POC to production is getting something in the hands of the user community sooner rather than later. Mostly because we do want to ensure that we're working through the kinks of the workflow issues and working through the kinks of the integration issues that you just mentioned. And we find that if we can expose the sources and also if we can expose the confidence results in that along the way at a very early age, and we get a representative enough and a scalable enough data eval set, then we are bringing people along on that journey in a really meaningful way that yeah.
Yeah, something, just a sideline that we spoke about before we came up here that I thought was interesting was when we were talking about the challenges of going from pilot to production, is that you have that guy that's working on his developer on the beefy workstation. He's built this cool thing, and now it's ready to go into production, but we're like, all right, was there a framework in the beginning on the sovereignty that we needed for this? Are all the models, does this, oh wait, is there a poison pill in there that, oh, well, actually, no, this model is running here and it's this, questionable whatever, but it does what we need. And so I think that that's an area where, organizations like the EBU can really help as you define these frameworks for these projects as you're going into it to be able to build these things responsibly. And then, obviously organizations like Quest and the rest, follow along so that you don't end up with this thing that worked beautifully in pilot and is really cool, but you can't possibly, this isn't going to work. We're, as a mature media organization, this isn't going to work. We're not, just posting stuff on Twitch, right? No offense to Twitch, but.
And if I just may add, one really talking out of the practical situation, and I'm sure the audience here has exactly the same situation for themselves. You do a proof of concept, you think, okay, got it, now let's bring it in operations. And whilst you are thinking about it, already the next model came out.
Yes.
Right.
And already the next big thing came out, because I think these days, I would almost say, the biggest enemy we have is speed.
Yes.
I would
Honestly,
debate that.
the developments are so fast.
Slow down, NVIDIA, slow down.
No, we don't want.
No.
And I think the consequence out of that is that the architectures, what we're developing,
That's right.
they need to be flexible enough that they can
Exactly.
manage the development cycles, because we
Yes.
don't want to fall behind.
And we
Of
also
course.
don't want to stifle innovation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We need the guardrails. That's what you were saying. We need to give governance regulations, and we need to have own governance regulations, but we need to manage the speed of developments.
Can I?
Of course.
It's so interesting that I'm so glad you hit on the sort of composable architecture because technology is moving at such a rapid pace. We've seen organizations also get stuck in this analysis paralysis of like, wait a minute, what about this model? And you can spend those cycles on really like just R&Ding and R&Ding. And really, if you want to move to production, you have to draw a line in the sand, be okay with swapping out your models later, and go.
And that's the whole idea behind software-defined infrastructure as well, right? Is so that you can be modular, so that you can be composable, and you can adapt as you progress in what you're doing. And the models are continuously improving. So I think we've gone from a world of wild hallucinations to now there's like really amazing technology that's providing useful benefits right now. And so just going back a little bit, one of the things that we did was back at GTC Paris was where we announced the initiative with the European Broadcasting Union around sovereign AI. And you can see on the screen, these are some of the areas that we are focused on, of course. And innovation is embedded into that. Education is embedded into that, of course. Data protection and governance, like Hans and the team here have been talking about. But then also, building on that is a set of standards. And, Hans, maybe you can talk a little bit about what the S4M is doing around standards specifically.
So, EBU itself is a user organization, and we run a number of project groups always amongst the users together. We also figured out, and this was a while ago already, we can't do everything alone. We need partnerships, and we need to have other groups established like we did in the past with DVB, you might remember, which is a non-for-profit association, also in the house of the EBU, but run on its own. And we said we need an association established, which we called at that time, because security was so important, security for media, whilst we are doing now totally different things. It enables us to bring users, public service, private, manufacturers, everyone together on one table, and to define the important things like what are the media cybersecurity issues we need to look for? What are content provenance issues we need to look for? What's the evolution of C2PA? And in particular also to look into the sovereign infrastructure and sovereign AI questions, because both go hand in hand.
Right.
You cannot have a super sovereign AI environment, but the underlying infrastructure would be very closed, would be a total dependency for you, then you're gone. And hence, in this new association, we're actually bringing the different parties of the ecosystem together to collaborate and actually define the future, and to come up also with proof of concepts, by the way, to show what we're doing.
Yeah, fantastic. And some of those things with the sovereignty is, we're starting with public service media because there is that imperative. As the citizen of a country, you rely on public service media for all kinds of things that are happening in the world, and also there's cultural programming and the like. And so to be able to trust the public service media to be representing the culture is very important. But that expands beyond public service media as well, because of course, as a viewer of media, maybe you have your favorite media you like to go to, but you want to know that if you're on the website and you're querying something to get some a summary of the news that has happened that week, you want to make sure that it's reflective of your values and the reason why you tuned into that program in the first place. And also, when we get outside of the walls of media, like in terms of news, there's also sports, there's also, think about gaming. You may have a lore that you care deeply about, and you don't want to get summaries that include something from another IP, for example. So it's just more of a fun example. But Greg, you're seeing some of this play out as well. Models are getting larger. And you're working on that problem. We've gone from 4 gigabyte to 8 gigabyte, 16 gigabyte GPUs, and now we have 96. And what's coming?
I have a workstation over there with 96 gigabytes of GPUs. I mean,
tell us about the DGX
infrastructure
station.
is keeping pace in a way that's exciting, and we're seeing also. I mean, we know there was this arms race with model development where it was like, just how many parameters can we shove into that model, and it's like, how much salt can I put in this dish? And we're now seeing a lot of smaller models that are able to be just as effective, if not more effective, than the bigger ones. So that's an interesting sort of area of research, and certainly things that Dell's looking to enable. But that also brings it back to being able to run these things on a desktop machine, right? So the developer there doesn't have to use a lightweight version of the model, or the lightweight version might be just as good as whatever larger version that they're using, and able to, build that solution from pilot and then take it into production into the data center and onward. So,
yeah, and I was thinking also about the GB300, and so what kind of doors does that open for people to have a platform with 775 gigabytes of coherent memory?
Watch your power bill. No, look, as I said, I think that we're looking to, from Dell's perspective, to be able to enable, the most foundational, edge models that people are doing, to be able to run that stuff, whether we're running it on the desktop or running it in the data center, and enable everything else that we're doing. We talk about trust, and that trust has to go all the way down to that foundational layer. And I feel like we're like the most foundational of the foundational layers, and we value the trust that people put into our name as a company and the rest, and I think that the reputation precedes us as far as that goes. So.
Of course, absolutely, and I love that Dell has the complete continuum from the very small GB10 for your desktop all the way to the DGX station or the GB300, and also anything you build on those works in the data center. And so that's amazing.
Definitely.
Yeah, and okay, so, and Hans, just given some of the projects, maybe we can talk a little bit about the EBU Academy specifically, and what is the EBU,
good.
and the collaboration.
Because I mentioned it.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I mentioned it before. I think one of the elements, what we have figured out, I think many years ago, is education is absolutely key, like everybody knows. And with this very fast evolution of technologies, we have started with the EBU Academy courses, dedicated courses to help these transformations of our industry, of our members. I mean, the move to IP, security measures, even for journalists in crisis regions. And just recently, when we announced our partnership, we have also started, together with the Academy, to offer courses on AI, which is adding up. I mean, the speed I mentioned before, our enemy or our friend, speed comes along with training awareness. And this is actually what we have realized in the collaboration as well on the EBU Academies. You can find out and Google, go to the web of the EBU and just see the courses what we're offering, which is quite important. But it's the pace which we need to keep. I mean, the pace of technology development, the pace of education is quite critical, I think, in particular in these times.
Yeah, and so also with education, obviously people can build internally, and but also there are companies like Quest who work in this area and can specifically get hands-on. Maybe you can talk a little bit about the work that Quest does and how someone can work with you for sovereign AI.
Well, the way that we think through it is essentially what we've been talking about here. And so because we come as a sort of a neutral party to clients and our customers, it's always just, what is it that you want to achieve? And in the case where you want to implement a solution that is very centered in that sovereign AI, we take that as a goal from the very, very beginning. And so I think I've mentioned this, but it's like when you're starting with the use cases, and then you start with your data stewardship, and then you send that through your eval set. We are completely centered on it. I love that you're talking about education, because I think that the adoption and the sort of ethos that comes with sovereign AI comes through education.
Yes.
And it informs all the decisions that you make, so that when you're implementing workflows, editorial workflows, for example, and you are centering it on how are we delivering, you state sovereign AI as a goal, it means that you're using that lens when you develop like what the product, what your roadmap is. Your product roadmap is, right? So it means that when I'm looking at editorial workflows, I'm saying, okay, is there bias and fairness in what we're implementing as an output?
Yeah. I think in addressing exactly this question of sovereignty, it's always good when we think a little bit in layers, okay? What does the sovereignty approach mean to my infrastructure question? What does it mean to the data which I'm going to use? Where are they coming from? Do we understand the data? Then it is the models which are trained. Who is owning the model? Do we understand what the model is going to deliver? Is it biased? Is it not biased? Can I benchmark it? Can I benchmark a model, which is often a question?
Right.
Yes, you can.
Yes.
Yes, you can. And then about the application layer on top of it. So I think, and then you have your internal governance as the organization. Does all of that fit to the values of my organization? Does it also fit to perhaps national regulations or EU-wide, in our case, EU-wide regulations? The AI Act, what we have is not very strict. It gives you guardrails within. You need to maneuver and you need to innovate. We have the GDPR rights as well.
Right.
So it's always good when we have these projects, we look at them and we structure them, we look at the layers, we look at what is required in terms of sovereignty, and then try to innovate and realize it around these guardrails.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because we're here with a predominantly North American audience, although NAB is global, but there are very specific concerns and regulations in different countries and different regions of the world. So that's definitely a consideration. And so when thinking about the standards that we're working on with EBU, of course we will be bringing that to light and incorporating that into it. But there will be global standards and they'll change.
Absolutely. And sorry, I don't want to take it away. I mean, there's a lot of going on under the umbrella also of the United Nations. They have a number of subgroups. There are big events going on. So, I mean, just as a little mini advertisement, there's this AI for Good initiative. The UN has subgroups in the International Telecommunication Union, which is working on, then don't call it sovereign AI, but it's all the same. How can I use technology for good?
Yes.
In a way. And I think the sovereignty debate of what we are having here falls exactly into that.
Absolutely, yeah. And so, Greg, maybe just kind of looking at it from a strategy point of view, stepping outside of, obviously there's all of the things that we've been talking about here, where you need to think about your data, your infrastructure, how you're going to protect everything and make it sovereign. What are the use cases at a high level that you're seeing here at the show, or that maybe even some of the things that you're showing in the booth?
Sure. So some of the more interesting use cases, and this relates to some of the more powerful GPUs that are now available and the sorts of models that you can run on just a single GPU, is moving that AI close to the edge, right?
Right.
And especially being able to process video live streams right at the point of capture. I think there's a thing that we talked about with you guys, especially with sporting events, right? And there's all kinds of interesting use cases there, but you don't have time to send that video to whether it's a cloud data center, your own data center that's across the country or in another country. You need to process that data right there. So for me, that's kind of some of the most exciting things that I'm seeing is this, like, let's push the AI to the edge. I now have, with the GB300 and some of these other, really powerful GPUs that I can put in a small box that can sit, unseen somewhere and process those real-time streams to get analysis from it. And we're seeing some really interesting use cases from Quest. Maybe you guys can talk a little bit about some of the stuff that you're doing there. But for me, that what I'm seeing here and what we're showing at the booth, that's kind of the most exciting topic.
Excellent. Yeah, Vanessa, please.
Well, I was going to say, I think we're all preparing for the use case that I think the four of us are all working on together, which is this live event detection, centering on the event as sporting event, right? And then taking that and centering the action in that moment, outputting that to vertical format, which you're seeing in many places, but we're finding it really kind of commoditized at this point, and that's exciting. And doing that really, really well using VSS and some other models is pretty exciting. And then
hang on one moment. Yeah. We're going to go off script. Raise your hands. Vertical video? Yes. Couple. Raise your hand for horizontal video. Right. I'm a horizontal guy, but anyway. All right. Sorry. Okay. Carry on.
That is definitely off script.
Yeah, you won't always be.
It has nothing to do with any of this, but sorry, you invited me on stage. You get what you get.
So good. And taking that, and I think what we're also able to do once we've identified the event or the object is to chronophotography that and isolate that really emotional moment in a really impressive way. That's been a really fun part of this all, is how to contextually prompt to identify these emphatic and triumphant moments in sports, and then take that and add overlays to it and send it off downstream in a vertical format to other outputs. And then, of course, in August, I think we're going to overlay it with the AI Pundit, which we're pretty excited about, live transcription, translation, and multi-language.
Yep. Well, I think, if I may, what we are seeing here at the NAB, one particular thing which really is standing out is the real-time capabilities of AI, which we did not have before.
Yeah.
I mean, of all the conventional experiments, what we've done in the past, most of the time it was a non-real-time or near real-time. Now we see the capabilities of technology allows us to do more and more real-time analysis, real-time translations, real-time detection, highlights, summarization, everything. Just name it. Just name it. And that's maybe one of the big leaps of developments what we have. And for us as broadcasters, news and sports is critical. In news is the trusted dimension of news. We need to now, by the click, is this trustful news? Has it been manipulated? Is it true? Can we track the origin? And here technology helps us to detect and to verify. And then in sports, as you say, I mean, these use cases, at the end of the day, what does count is really the experience at the audience. Is it vertical? We want to have it vertical, automated, fast. As less as possible human interaction. Of course, the human need to stay always somehow in the loop. That's also what one of our mantras is, in particular for news, definitely for news. But the technology can help us, and I think we see so many opportunities now coming out, and I just repeat myself, the speed of development is crazy. It's crazy, and we need to manage that and use it and use the opportunities. And it leads us, of course, to new challenges which have to be addressed. And we do this also in partnership. I mean, interoperability questions come up. And there is one big project which is going everywhere here, which is the Dynamic Media Facility, or MXL. Where is your sticker, by the way? Where is the sticker?
Back, I'm so sorry.
It's an open source project. So that is one thing which helps us, again, to manage speed, adoption for real time. And I think there are a number of things underway, which we can see here.
Yeah, and one of those things, so you made me think of a few other things that we should mention, which is one of them is NVIDIA is working on developing a real-time AI video pipeline or platform, and it's called Holoscan for Media. And it is SMPTE 2110 compliant. It has an NMOS controller. It has PTP timing. And it's really a platform for developers to build on. And so you're going to see more and more applications being deployed as we get ready for
and we've been big boosters of Holoscan for Media for some number of years now. So come check it out. I think it really is, talking about enabling the rapid development that guys like Quest are doing and all of that. I mean, I think it's quite critical. So you can come and see that running. Can we do plugs up here? I'm going to do a plug. Come see it running at the Dell booth. It's pretty cool. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, it's fair. It's a great place to go and get educated about it. We've been partnered with Dell on Holoscan for Media from the beginning.
I think if I can do a plug for Quest, I think we built an accelerator on it last year.
You did.
At this time for news, yeah.
Yeah, and so we have this platform. We also have something that we've announced. We announced at our annual conference last week or last month, and I'm going to. Again, it's just something you can look forward to and available now, though, is NVIDIA AI for Media. And so we have a suite of AI effects for audio, video, and augmented reality. And so everything from background noise removal and making a microphone sound like a studio quality microphone, even if it was recorded from a laptop or something like that. But then also, as part of that, some of those have been deployed to Holoscan for Media, which is what you'll see in the booth. And then we also we announced a content localization blueprint, which takes active speaker detection. It also takes lip sync. It also has some partner technologies in there, like 11 Labs or Cam AI. And I'll just get through this and then I'll turn it back over. But you'll be able to see content localization with the lips synced for speakers that don't speak all of those languages. And I think, and then the last one was synthetic video detection, which ties back to something Hans was saying. Trust. And so the idea with it is that it can predict the likelihood of something that was used or generated with AI. And it's new, but it's it's been trained on diffusion specifically and some other things, and it'll continue to develop as we go.
Yeah, I think to bring it back to the sovereignty question that we sort of started with here, these are amazing tools that
Right.
are being developed and are developed now. I think that in order for the public to trust those tools, for content creators, for news producers, for to be able to really use those tools, that's where sovereignty becomes really important, because your audience has to trust what you're doing isn't bullshit, right? They're gonna kick me right off this stage, but so I think that it's awesome, but we need to have trust from the beginning to be able to execute on those tools, and whether it's trust in the that the standards are being met, that the execution of the partners, that the underlying infrastructure that it's running on. I just think that it becomes even more important as these tools become more sophisticated, and you can do great things, great good or great evil. So let's make sure that it's good, and I think the sovereignty push is a big part of that. But you had something, Hans.
Well, I agree with you. I mean, as I mentioned before, the sovereignty question is a structural question which you better split up into different dimensions. There's not one answer for sovereignty.
Correct. Yeah.
And each organization also has to answer the question for themselves. What defines my sovereignty? And at the end of the day, public service media organization, most of the time, the key element for them is trust in content. I mean, the reputation, when it's gone, it's really gone. So trust is at the core. Then you have the other dimension of news and sports, of course. Audience, how can I excite the audience on any device with new forms of content representation? And that is another very important element. And this is, I think, common for every media organization. We want the eyeballs, we want the audience, we want to catch the audience. And I think sovereignty is in all of these ingredients, in all of these layers, and I believe it needs to be respected in some form. That's the reason why I believe my first recipe always is do experiments as much as you can, of course, but at the same time, you need to write your own governance framework. That's probably the best expression.
Right.
How do you deal with AI in your organization? And don't believe this is done and then it's done. No, it's a living framework,
Right.
which evolves with the capabilities, which evolves also with what the audience expect. But this is the saying, it's a hardcore work, but it needs to be done alongside with all the experiments what everybody is doing.
Yeah, absolutely. And being a global community now, right, it's ever increasingly important for us because, things change, even in culture. Things change rapidly. Things are very different now than they were when I was a kid. So, for example. But yeah, so just in thinking about some of those concepts about globalization, the EBU, how many languages are you representing?
So we have 56 countries and 50-something more languages.
Wow.
I don't have the exact figure in my mind.
That's a lot.
I mean, many languages. And I know where you go.
Right.
Go, ask the question.
Well,
What can AI do for all the languages? Yeah.
Well, I think it's an opportunity, certainly.
Absolutely.
But I was going to ask genuinely, does the EBU feel like this, localization is an opportunity for global reach?
Yeah, I think there are two dimensions to it. Number one, localization is critical because people, in terms of news, sports, they want to know what's happening in my neighborhood.
Right.
Right. So technology can help here, journalists, workflows, etc., to be much faster, detect what's going on in my neighborhood and share this. Then secondly, I want to know what's going on in the other countries.
Right.
But God hell, I don't speak the language. So even if I tune in or get the news, I don't understand them. And we have already built products in the EBU which do the automatic translation. But it's getting better and better. There was a time when everybody was afraid to use automatic translation. Today, thanks to tech, it's almost a no-brainer. It's almost a no-brainer. And here we bridge between local demands, we bridge between the demands of, I want to be global, I want to understand what's going on there and there and there, and technology helps me to understand this much more quicker in the language which I prefer. And there is no lip sync issue anymore. I mean, it can be adopted, all these, but then we come back, has somebody manipulated it? So we come back to the trust question.
Yes, yes, of course. And are you seeing this too, Vanessa, where customers are asking you for this, for localization specifically, or?
It's embedded, yeah.
It's embedded, for sure.
Yeah, because a lot of the work that we do is across studios and broadcasters. Of course, we always want to make sure that there's rights, right, but yes, for sure. And we'll be demoing it, yeah. It should be ready in early June and ready for August, yeah.
Yeah, and so and you brought up VSS earlier, which is video search and summarization. I think that's another great technology, and pulling some of these things together on the subject of agents. So agents are now the hot topic. I'm sure you're all hearing about AI agents, and then OpenClaw, just completely the fastest growing technology ever, I think.
Right.
Which is absolutely astounding what's happening there. And these are autonomous autonomous long-running agents, so they could be performing tasks for you while you sleep, which is great because it gives companies massive scale when it comes to things like localization, when it comes to things like reformatting content, and using video search and summarization to find the content, reformat it for different platforms, different formats, different languages. And this could be constantly running, right?
And also just the whole eval framework. The fact that you can set up these hypotheses and just run it to constantly find the gaps and recompile and submit it again. Like, that's how we were able to develop this latest one in about 6 weeks with part-time resources. It's just we set up this framework to begin with.
Wow. Yeah, that's excellent. So are you hearing members starting to talk about agents and the?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely, no doubt. As I said, within the guardrails on your frameworks, you innovate, full stop. There's no stop on that, but you do it within the guardrails. And in particular, when we see the capabilities, what agentic workflows will offer to us, immediately the question came, well, it's fantastic. Actually, how can we make sure that everything which is going on in the background now, when one system calls the next system, is it still adherent to the rules, to the values of our company, of our organization?
Right.
So currently the thinking is clear. There need to be, when it is about very critical environments and content generation, which goes on air, there is no air anymore, there need to be a sign-off by humans.
Yeah.
So the last word at this time of the developments, what we see, is always the editorial teams. And this is not for mistrust of technology, but we know it's early days, whilst we think it's mature because the results are so fascinating, that there's still the notion of the human need to stay in control. Also maybe for some legal questions which might come later on, which are not solved yet. I mean, let's be honest, developments are very fast. I personally think that maybe now there is the time when, I mean, every couple of years, and I've mentioned this colleague in the industries already in the private conversations, every couple of years we see the announcement, we have solved your question on archives, how you leverage your archives. Now is the time, we have solved it for you.
Right.
Now you can monetize, you can leverage, everything will be done because we have this fancy new technology ready for you. I believe now with agentic workflows and the capabilities, there is something in it now because there is so much in archives of media organizations which is not utilized. But when you do it in a clever way, and I would love to discuss use cases and start diving deeper into this, how can agentic workflows run on archives of media organizations and start leveraging really, truly, once forever, in a good way? So not only hype for this
archives.
year and next year it's gone again, but really in such a way.
Greg, do you
Beyond
wanna-
metadata generation, I have to say.
Right.
Yeah, metadata's well, that's a whole other topic. But I think I agree with you that we're finally there. The value of the archive this time. We'll see. We'll talk next year. But that also in terms of the sovereignty of that. If you are a media organization, certainly a public one, right, where the public theoretically owns this is a public good, you need to be really sure that the tools that you are using to scan all of your media to get that value, that there's not some, nobody reads the
exactly.
EULA, right?
We are back to the sovereignty question.
The sovereignty becomes super important. And you know all those assets aren't living in someone else's infrastructure somewhere that if you don't pay the bill, it's going to disappear, right? So that ownership becomes super important. The sovereignty of the systems that get built, super important, because you don't want to inadvertently hand the keys to, something that belongs to the public.
Exactly.
In this case,
Exactly.
we're talking about public broadcasting.
Exactly.
So I think it's very interesting and super important from a sovereignty perspective.
Or that from a content understanding perspective, that the underlying foundational models aren't trained on someone else's content, language, text or video or images.
Yeah, and with agents, particularly, when we started this project, we were talking about agents. There were agents, and they were largely building blocks of workflows and automating certain types of workflows with agents. And now we're at a point where agents have a certain level of autonomy that you give them. They have access to internal systems, whether it's the files on your computer or it could be systems that you've given them access to do reports for you, for example. You want to get a useful report on what's trending on your website, but now it has access to that information. An agent also has the ability to execute code and use tools on your computer that you've given it access to. You can MCP to other tools or use different ways of connecting. And then, of course, they have the ability to communicate externally, because you may want to have an agent that is leveraging your content archives, and it's doing social listening to find out what's trending in the world, and it could use, put some topical content like, hey, this is really cool and relevant for, people who are on TikTok who are, listening to this sort of thing. And so you could be producing content. Amazing capabilities. However, with that, of course, you don't want to have any breaches of that sort of thing. So that's why sovereignty, again, becomes very important, and also security in terms of how you're securing those agents and providing tools that allow your teams, because there are people in your companies that want to innovate, they want to play with agents, they want to learn, but you have to set things up in a secure way. And so we announced something called NemoClaw for OpenClaw, which is a part of NVIDIA's agent toolkit. We have a runtime called OpenShell that helps with some of that auditability, security, and isolated sandboxes. And so I think it's really important now, even in the early stages, before you're unveiling these tools, to have a secure environment, like setting up the infrastructure so that you can provide your staff, start with the strategy, set up the secure environment, set up those sandboxes for people to be able to play and innovate and learn. And of course, learning is important with everything the EBU Academy is doing. And NVIDIA's Deep Learning Institute is also working directly with the EBU Academy on some of this. And then, of course, having a team that can help you build this in a safe, secure, and sovereign way. So,
And that you can support it going forward, that supports you in carrying on that tradition
yeah,
after that team is gone.
absolutely. So let's wrap with a roundtable here on some of the things, looking ahead to, and it's crazy to say next 12 or 24 months. So you choose the time frame. But just looking ahead, what are some of the things that you're excited about, particularly around the topic of AI? We'll start with you, Greg.
I touched on this before. I think it really is the live aspect of it, and the sort of real-time processing of video, and adding additional interest and value on that. For me, that's kind of the most exciting thing happening right now, and sort of the new. So I'm super excited about that, and certainly the stuff we're seeing at the show is not dampening that excitement one bit, for sure.
Yeah, no, that's great. Hans is deep in thought, but we'll...
So I start with the engineering point of view. I think as an engineer, I love the initiatives which have been started to achieve interoperability in the workflows for real-time processing, for making all the AI, what we envisage, real-time capable. From the public service media point of view, the most important element, I believe, is trust in content.
Yeah.
And all the guardrails around it, trust is the most fundamental topic for all the public service media organizations. And it has so many facets to it, but it's the key element, I think, where we need to look after.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Vanessa?
It's hard to say. Greg kind of took my answer. Thanks, Greg.
Spoiler.
But I think that, and also, Hans, I love what you said. And because I think that what started as a conversation in large part in Europe, the way that is coming, that will become in the next 12 to 24 months, I believe, real commonplace in the United States. And we're going to see that sort of trust, I think, embedded in the systems we do in a more obvious way. Mm-hmm. And I'm excited about that. And yes, of course, live and really being able to, I'm always really drawn to using AI to capture very human things, identify very human things, and it really excites me. So
yeah,
I've got another one, if I will, and I'd actually be interested in your folks' thoughts about this. And this is a tension that has been around for some time, but now is accelerating, and it relates to sovereignty, which is what we're talking about here, and that is the buy versus build, right?
Right.
And how that relates, right? And then we were all, they're like, no, everyone's a software engineer. Well, that's not true. I mean, you talk to a real software engineer, which I'm not, but and look, we're Dell. We're going to enable people to do what they need to do, right? But I'm really interested from this, Vanessa, from your perspective, from Quest's perspective. I mean, you guys build tools, but certainly you also use off-the-shelf tools as well. And I'd be curious your thoughts on that buy versus build conundrum, or how you approach organizations for that, and maybe if you have any thoughts about sovereignty as it relates.
Well, so we always come to it from a position with our clients of what's your approved stack, right? Because we are so adoption focused, we don't spend a ton of time working in stacks that are these sort of like niche areas that will never make it through cyber, frankly, because we do have to be concerned about that. So that's kind of where our framework starts. But from a performance perspective, we do tend to see performance in some of the more open source models that are really fine-tuned, and obviously it can be more cost-effective as well. This is smaller models, right? So we do look to innovate in those areas, but it's always a mix, right? And then at the end of the day, one of our chief architects is here, and we were just on this project of like, you can map out this agentic strategy and think it looks really great, and then a client will go, yeah, I'm going to use Snowflake. So it's, we'll always defer, but yeah.
I believe what we're going to see, and that's the reason why I say there's a lot of homework for the industry now, when procurement and tenders are written, you all of a sudden will now find the word sovereignty in it.
Right.
And of course, it needs to be defined, and what do you mean exactly there? But I think the industry is now triggered. It's way beyond a standard. It's way beyond the capability what you want to have. You also go into this tool, what I want to buy, what I want to integrate, need to be sovereign in these aspects. It need to tell me exactly, is there a bias in the model? Is there any risk on my data which are going to be used, etc. and so forth. There are new questions appearing which the industry has to answer. And of course we need new standards, we need new technology, but I think there is a high awareness now in the industry, at least on the user side. You will read this in the procurement, you will read it as templates. We are building such a document together for our membership so that they can ask the right questions. And honestly, with these questions, it makes it maybe a little bit more harder for the industry to respond, but at the end, we all will gain through this because the products will be sovereign.
Yes, and so, I mean, and that's what's really exciting to me is once we have this sovereign architecture, we have, sovereign AI, and then there are other pieces to it. So custom models that are built on your data, I think that's a very exciting area as well, and that's one of the things that I'm really excited about is having those custom models, and then having those sandboxes for, and in this industry, we have some of the most creative people in the world in media and entertainment. And so when they have those sandboxes where they get to play, where they get to innovate, I think we haven't crossed that chasm yet where everyone has access to all the tools anytime to just go and play. And once we get that into the hands of the most creative people in the world, we're going to see amazing new things blossom from that, right? So it's like we have 1,000 seeds planted, and what are going to be the things that change the industry in a very positive way for the companies who work in it, but also for the consumers of the content. I think we're at a very exciting time right now, and I think sovereignty is one of the things that is going to help with that.
It's pretty inspiring. I like that.
I like it.
It's fundamentally hopeful.
Right. Yeah, I think so too.
So my invite is really here because we are public service, so we do it for the public. Actually, this is where we are funded. That's my salary. In a way, we give back to the public. The work what we do in terms of, the MXL interoperability layer, what we're building is open source, need to be open source. This is the driver. When we write these documents, what we are saying, we want finally also to get them out into the public once we have agreed that this is the right thing, how we characterize sovereignty, because it helps the whole industry. So the invite is, anyone, contact me, contact us, and I'm sure we're happy to share and engage.
Final invitation for the folks here?
Exciting times, man. It's a great time to be alive, and it's a great time to be in media. So I'm pretty excited to be doing it, and yeah.
And you're here in the North Hall, correct?
We are here in the North Hall. Come take a look at all the cool stuff, yeah.
And you are in the West Hall.
West Hall. Yep.
And so you, anything you want to mention? Yes, please come by.
Come by, check out the accelerator that we talked about here on stage.
And we are partnered with Dell at NAB this year, so we are also in the Dell booth, so please come by there. And also, if you are a developer, go to developer.nvidia.com. Lots of tools that you can get there. We also have build.nvidia.com, where you can,
Shout out NVIDIA's documentation and tools.
And so you can try things live there, of course, and Quest can help. So thank you so much for joining us, everyone. We really appreciate your time today, and have a great NAB.
Yeah, thank you.